Welcome back to the Andrew Tate Show by GSMC Sports. Before the break, we were talking about the life and legacy of Jerry West. Our first segment, we covered last night's game between the Dallas Mavericks and the Boston Celtics. And now we are going back to the ever-evolving topic of college sports and the changes that are happening there. The ACC is on the brink of a significant transformation as Florida State and Clemson are poised to exit the conference. According to Action Network's Brett McMurphy, it's not a matter of if, but when. Despite attempts to repair relations, the inevitability of their departure is underscored by ongoing legal battles and strategic delays by the ACC to prolong settlements. Florida State and Clemson's discontent with the ACC has reached a tipping point, driven by disputes over the conference's television agreements and a hefty $140 million exit penalty. These tensions echo the recent destabilization seen in the Pac-12, indicating that the ACC may be next in line for a major reconfiguration. McMurphy, speaking on the Paul Feinbaum Show, highlighted that the ACC is prepared to fight these departures tooth and nail. However, once a settlement is reached, it could trigger a domino effect, leading to other schools like North Carolina exploring exit strategies. The SEC has shown interest in North Carolina, adding another layer of complexity to the situation. The legal standoff marked by Florida State and Clemson's lawsuit aimed at dissolving the restrictive grant of rights and the steep exit fees. This drawn-out process seems destined to end with both schools seeking new conferences, potentially the Big Ten for its coastal appeal or other strategic alliances. The broader implications for the ACC are significant as the conference grapples with these departures. Its future composition and competitive landscape hang in the balance. The departure of two powerhouse programs could set a precedent, encouraging other schools to follow suit, fundamentally altering the ACC's structure and influence in college athletics. Tate, what do you think about this latest comment, development, ongoing storyline, whatever you want to call it?
You know, it's kind of cool and interesting to hear some of the experts give their thoughts and talk about how this is inevitable. It's going to happen. I've been saying that as well. I agree. I think it's just a matter of time before this happens. So, you know, the question that comes to mind is, when will this happen? Is it sooner than later? Because I feel like it should be decided soon, within the next few months. And then what is the effect of this? The ACC is going to hold Florida State and Clemson to the letter of the law that is the Greenwich Rights contract. That's going to be that 150 million, 140 million exit fee plus your media rights. That's another 500 million. So they want $600-700 million out of this. Where is that settlement going to be? I feel like Clemson and Florida State, especially Florida State, has looked at it and said, it doesn't matter the dollar figure, they want out. If I'm the ACC, I make a settlement. It's getting to that point. It's going to happen. And I think right now is the time to settle this. And here's the reason why. The Big 12 is starting to talk about being open for business because they're eyeing some of the ACC schools. But if they do a settlement that is big enough, you look around and you do a settlement of, let's say, half of that, let's say 350 million, 300 million. You settle that, you let Florida State go, you let Clemson go, hope and pray that North Carolina doesn't go as well. But the reason why I think you should start thinking about settling is because you want to be able to make an aggressive move incredibly fast. What would be more attractive to the remaining ACC schools? If you lose Duke and you lose Clemson, but the schools get to split up 700 million between the two of them. That makes it a lot easier to swallow. Then you go out and you finish that West Wing with the ACC, make it an all-coast conference. You already have Cal, you have Stanford. I personally think they should go after Oregon State and Washington State. I would even add San Diego State in there as well. And so that it makes more, if you add those three teams, it makes a West Wing way more attractive and appealing. And now you're covering the East Coast and West Coast. And then I would try for one of the Florida schools, the Central Florida or South Florida, one of those Florida schools to take the place so they still have a presence in Florida. But when you start looking at this and you start reading this stuff, I don't think there's anyone that thinks there's a way for you know what, we've had a talk and we don't want to, we're going to reconcile. Reconciliation is out. Florida State has made it. You're at that point of no return. So now, what is that move? You don't want to be the last one to make a move. What could cost the ACC is this is why I say they need to settle. If they settle and let's say they agree upon, you got to pay that whole 140. That's set. Plus, you get half of your media rights. That makes it so much harder for other schools to leave. But if they go through and they battle this all the way out, and you just need one judge to say the media rights is not enforceable. If a judge goes in and says the media rights deal is not enforceable, and this is one that a lot of people in SEC thinks, that your exit fee is too high, and a judge files that way, and a lot of people think a judge will eventually file that rule that way. If that happens, then you've opened yourself up to a mass exodus, because if a judge rules, then now it's open game. Duke, North Carolina, Miami, they're gonna go running to the Big Ten. For schools like Virginia, they're gonna want to go. You're gonna end up with this full collapse of schools. But if you do the settlement where you've established an exit policy, these other schools, they can leave. But it's going to cost them $350 million to leave. You'll be surprised how many schools stay. And that's the reason why I think it's smart to settle this now than to wait and let a judge make that final decision. Does that make sense to you, Sarah?
It does make a lot of sense. But every time we have these segments, and we've been talking a lot about NCAA and conference realignment and everything that's going on right now with settlements and shifting, it's so hard to even have a clear picture of what things are going to look like in 6 months, a year, 5 years, because every day it's something, it feels like it's something new, and you cannot say if this happens then this, because if this happens there's 6 other things that fall into place.
If a judge rules that the granted rights are not enforceable, that the exit fees are not considered fair and equitable, then it's a free for all, and the ACC will collapse. Because when you lose Clemson, Florida State, Miami, North Carolina, Duke, Virginia, schools like that, then you're going to start looking around, and schools like Pitt and Louisville are going to get a little nervous and going to run to the Big 12 as well. Everyone's going to start looking for a safe harbor. And kind of like what happened with the Pac-12. Arizona, they held on as long as possible. Arizona State held on long as possible. Utah didn't want to go to the Big 12. But eventually, when all heck broke loose, those schools went running. Colorado ended up in the Big 12. You don't when you start losing your top schools, when the USC, UCLA's, Oregon, and Oregon State say we're out, and then Colorado was the straw that broke the camel back for the Pac-12. At that point, that's when everyone started scrambling, because no school. And the reason why this will be a full collapse is if a judge rules that they can't enforce any of this, the exit fees, the granted rights, or anything, there will be a mass exodus, because no one wants to end up like Oregon State and Washington State. We have nothing. We don't have no television deal, no conference, and our future is in major jeopardy. No one wants to be that school. So, like I said, schools like Pittsburgh and Louisville are going to run to the Big 12, where they have relationships with West Virginia and bringing back certain rivalries. There's going to be schools having to make very tough decisions that they would not have normally made. But if the ACC is proactive and they settle this and make it so that it doesn't end up in court, that it in court, but not a judge ruling, settle it so that the benchmark is, listen, if you want to go, anyone that wants to go, it's going to be 350 million to go. You're going to keep a lot of those schools. And then from there, the schools that do leave, it's easier to replace and the fact that they've already brought in an SMU and a Cal and a Stanford, they already have padding. But then you can add on a couple more. Maybe that Oregon State, maybe that Washington State, maybe a South Florida. Maybe start looking at Tulane, some schools like that. You start looking at some of the schools around you, and it's possible. It is incredibly possible to keep the conference together. Maybe even go after a UConn football program, basketball program, and try to bring them over. You have to be proactive. That's the thing I'm most concerned about with the ACC. They've taken the point of, we're digging in and we're going to fight this all the way to the end. But that approach makes it so there's no fallback. And so that's what I'm looking at.
Well, I think, as I say at the end of every one of these segments, we're going to continue talking about it. We will keep monitoring the situation and trying to figure out where things are going to end up. Time for our third break of this segment. When we come back, switching subjects to a nightclub in New York that has some controversial entrance requirements. You are tuned in to the Andrew Tate Show by GSMC Sports, and we will be right back.